Back in 1921, when Hollywood was still known as the land of dreams, a single party could decide a person's life and death. Behind the closed door of room 1219 at the St. Francis Hotel lingered not only the scent of bootlegged liquor during Prohibition, but also the final, agonizing gasps of a young woman named Virginia Rappe. The tragedy dragged Roscoe, Fatty, Arbuckle, the world's highest paid and most beloved comedian of his time, straight into ruin. Yet beneath the newspaper's sensational headlines, amid rumors of violence, coercion, and debauchery, Virginia Rappe was treated like a soiled prop, quickly consumed by the public, then just as quickly forgotten. Was she merely a victim, or the first domino to fall in Hollywood's ruthless game of fame and power? The truth often lies hidden in those quiet moments deliberately overlooked by the world. On the sweltering afternoon of September 5, 1921, the sunlight over San Francisco carried an unsettling heat. Dressed in her finest silk gown, Virginia Rappe stepped into a party originally meant for celebration. She possessed a haunting beauty unique to the silent film era, tinged with quiet melancholy. By then, she was already a well-known fashion model and aspiring actress, waiting for the big break that would make her a star. The host of the gathering was Roscoe Arbuckle, affectionately known as Fatty, a close friend of Charlie Chaplin and one of the greatest comedians of his generation. But the moment Virginia stepped into that smoke-filled room thick with alcohol, tobacco, and whispered conversations among celebrities, the wheels of fate had already turned toward irreversible disaster. Hours later, screams and crashing sounds erupted from behind the door. When guests forced their way in, they found Virginia curled up on the bed, overcome with excruciating pain. It was not the disorientation of drunkenness, but a sense of life fading away from deep within her soul. She kept pointing toward the doorway, toward the towering man who still stood laughing, seemingly unaware of the catastrophe unfolding before him. In that instant, Hollywood's innocent golden age came to an abrupt end, torn apart along with Virginia's broken dress. To grasp the cruelty of that fateful night, one must understand the lonely journey Virginia Rappe had endured. Born in Chicago, she was a girl struggling at the bottom of society yet always gazing toward the stars. In an era when women held little social standing, her beauty was both her only passport to a better life and her most dangerous burden. She once worked as a clothing model, learning to maintain grace under the public gaze even when her heart was filled with unease. A string of failed relationships left her increasingly guarded against the world. She came to Hollywood not to indulge in decadence, but to seek a safe haven amid the illusions woven by film and light. She was even engaged to a prominent producer, Bainbridge. Days before the tragedy, she wrote letters imagining their future wedding, dreaming of a small house by the sea where she could live free from endless social obligations. This quiet longing for ordinary happiness stood in heartbreaking contrast to her image as a glamorous socialite at the party. She never realized that in the insatiable machine of Hollywood fame, a young woman's innocence and life were nothing more than cheap pawns in a game of power. Virginia's death was slow and tormenting. She lingered in agony for 4 long days in the hospital. A ruptured bladder had led to fatal peritonitis, a death sentence in an age before antibiotics. During those 4 days, Hollywood's propaganda machines sprang into ruthless action. Determined to protect their cash cow Roscoe Arbuckle, major studios hired private detectives and paid writers to smear Virginia's reputation. Newspapers painted her as promiscuous and chronically ill, even claiming her suffering was self-inflicted, the consequence of drinking excessive bootlegged alcohol at the party. Lying helpless in her hospital bed, Virginia could not defend herself. She could hear newsboys shouting headlines outside her window, her name reduced to nothing more than a dirty gossip topic. In her final moments, did she think of the cold winds of Chicago, or the wedding dress she would never get to wear? On September 9, 1921, this young dahlia, yet to fully bloom, withered away amid endless misunderstanding and slander. And the real storm was only just beginning to rage across courtrooms and newspaper front pages. The subsequent trial became a public spectacle of human curiosity and judgment. It was the first time an A-list Hollywood star stood trial on such grave charges. Media tycoon William Randolph Hearst discovered that audiences were far more fascinated by a fallen idol than a comedian's laughter, and sensational headlines demonized Arbuckle relentlessly. Meanwhile, Virginia's reputation was completely destroyed. In court, lawyers dissected her medical history and pried into every detail of her private life without mercy. She was framed as a gold digger attempting to extort a celebrity, her suffering trivialized and her dignity humiliated under the microscope of public scrutiny. After 3 lengthy trials, Arbuckle was eventually acquitted and even received a formal letter of apology from the jury. Yet there were no true winners in this power struggle. Arbuckle's career was ruined, and he spent his remaining years drowning in alcohol. Virginia Rappe, meanwhile, became a symbol, a cautionary tale, and a sacrificial lamb that pushed Hollywood to establish its first moral censorship codes. People discussed how the case reshaped the film industry and spawned strict censorship rules. Yet few stopped to remember that on that afternoon, Virginia had simply wanted to dress beautifully and attend a party filled with laughter. As this story draws to a close, the door to room 1219 at the St. Francis Hotel seems to have shut forever in the passage of time. Virginia Rappe's name remains forever trapped in the shadow of what is remembered as Hollywood's first major scandal. Whenever her story is mentioned, it is usually with morbid curiosity and cold judgment. Beneath all the rumors and sensationalism, however, the young girl who once ran through Chicago's streets and dreamed of stardom has faded from memory. Tonight, as we reflect on Virginia Rappe, let us set aside courtroom testimonies and malicious speculation. Remember only the woman named Virginia, who loved lace and long gowns, and who once simply and purely longed for love amid the quiet chapters of her fleeting life.